But let's bring in the man that would know that, our own Boston Bruins, NESN, TV guru, Dalai Lama of TV in New England, Jack Edwards. Jack, welcome to the Jim Sensabella Sports Show. How are you today?
The Dalai Lama. That's great.
I had to throw that.
So I'll just remind you to do one of the offbeat things that he has suggested. Take chances with food. It's the 4th of July. Why just bother with the hamburgers and hot dogs? Do something creative, right?
Absolutely.
Fried ice cream or something.
Fried ice cream on the grill. That would work. I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
How's the weather where you're at? Because right now we're in downtown Nashua, and if I told you right now there's more lightning bolts hitting around us than you could shake a stick at, the weather's crazy over the next couple of days here.
Yeah, well, I got a feeling that once this thing blows through, it's going to be awesome.
I hope so.
But I'm in western New England right now, and it's building up. We're going to get a pretty good line of thunderstorms, I'm sure.
Well, speaking of thunder and rain, I love it. But right now, the Boston Bruins right now, to me, are a little bit here and there. But I see Sean Thornton going. Obviously, we knew that was going to happen. You knew Chad Johnson was going to be around. Okay, Jerome, you couldn't do much with a 1-year contract. But I got to be honest with you, looking at the roster, we got a very good nucleus here, very good, strong nucleus. You got guys that were hurt, McQuaid last year coming back, Seidenberg coming back, Chris Kelly coming back. I mean, right now on paper, what do you think the biggest hole the Bruins need right now?
Well, obviously, they've got a significant need for a dangerous right wing, and it depends if you consider the Bergeron line or the Krejci line to be the top line, but that leaves you without a top 6 right wing, and that's got to be an impact player. It can't be a nice young player that you hope will mature, because if Matt Fraser turns out not to be the kind of guy who can pop in 25 goals and have an outstanding plus-minus because he's a great free-zone player, you got a major hole in your roster. You become a team that can be shut down if you have one good defensive pair and you can knock them up against the Bergeron line, which usually has to shut down the other team's top line anyway. The loss of Iginla is significant. But the problem was that the Bruins had to give him an incentive-loaded contract to fit him in last year. They have a $4 million tag penalty because he hit every single incentive he could hit. So that means that had they signed him to the same $5.3 million a year that Colorado had signed him to, that they're basically paying him $9 million this year to play right wing for David Krejci's line. That's just not going to cut it. He's just not worth that. As great a guy as he is, it completely blows up the team. And so they've got to find a way. And the way they're going to have to find a way is probably through a significant acquisition, which means they're going to have to give up significant assets.
Right.
And fortunately for them, they have institutional depth, the likes of which they haven't had since Ray Bourque was probably in his prime when they were making Stanley Cup Finals runs against the Edmonton Oilers in '88 and '90. The Bruins really haven't been this deep in that much time. So
No.
Peter Chiarelli is going to be able to deal from a position of strength, but he needs to deal. They need to make some moves. They need to get more dangerous. They need to get a little bit faster, and it's not all going to come from Providence.
No, not at all. Once again, talking with Jack Edwards from the NESN here, Boston Bruins TV. I'll say it again, Dalai Lama of TV. I love listening to you, man. And I love chatting with you at the games, too, which has been great. Here's my thought. Our defense, to me, one of the things we noticed in the playoffs, and we all talked about it, we talked about it at the games, Chara really had a tough time in that final round, and especially against Montreal. He just had a tough time. At times, he looked just out of sync, out of mind. Supposedly, there's no real big injuries that it kept him from it, a lot of pride more on Z's part of it. But, I mean, is it time to start cutting back, especially when you have guys like Seidenberg? Kevin Miller, to me, played fantastic this year. You got Torrey Krug, who continues to just be at both ends of the ice, offensive threat and defensively. Adam McQuaid, Boychuk. You got all these guys. Dougie Hamilton had a phenomenal second half in playoffs. Isn't it time to cut back on his minutes a little bit?
Yes.
Yeah, I know, right? Easy answer, yes.
Yeah, it is. And it's nice to be able to say this about a player who just got nominated for the Norris Trophy, but Chara is a player who has begun his decline. He's never going to be an average NHL defenseman. He could play into his mid-40s and be a way above average NHL defenseman, but he's not the monster, scary stud that he was in 09, 10, and 11. And that's not to say that he's a bad defenseman. He's still a great defenseman. The Bruins need make the transition to the point that Chara is less of an everything defenseman and more of a I'm going to erase your top line defenseman, which is what he does best. The reason that the guy is going to go down as one of the great defensemen of his era is because he is the preeminent shutdown defenseman during his career. There has been no one who has covered more ice, stopped more rushes, and defeated more superstar efforts from the other side than Zdeno Chara. And that's how the Bruins are going to use him more. They're going to take some of his load off. It comes at a time when Dougie Hamilton is on the rise, when Adam McQuaid is coming off an injury-plagued season. And we were just chatting with him in the hallway a couple of months ago at the conclusion of the season and saying, well, it's good you got them all over with at once. And he was laughing about it, but that's certainly the attitude that he hopes to take. You've got a lot of chips on the table if you want to wheel one of these young defensemen. There are a lot of really good young defensemen on the Boston Bruins and some older ones like Johnny Boychuk who might come into play if somebody offers something substantial, especially in combination with another player or another prospect that the Bruins have. The Bruins also, they've got a couple of guys in Spooner and Kovalchuk who are outstanding young players and have great potential, just haven't been able to prove themselves in the National Hockey League.
Jack, Nick Anastas here in studio. Thanks again for coming on. I wanted to ask you about the signing from yesterday. The Bruins adding another goaltender, Jeremy Smith, to a 1-year, 2-way contract. He played for Springfield in the AHL. Monarchs fans may recognize the name. Pretty good numbers overall in the American Hockey League and a former second-round pick of Nashville. Where does he fit in behind Tuukka?
Way behind. he's the fourth goalie in the organization as we see it. Svedberg's going to be the backup. When you sign a guy who's played virtually his entire AHL career for a one-way contract for upwards of $500,000, I think he got $600 if memory serves. That means he's going to be the backup to Tuukka Rask. So Svedberg goes into camp as the backup, and unless he absolutely stinks, which he will not, he's going to make the team out of camp. They already said goodbye to Chad Johnson, who did a terrific job as a backup. He got a job with the Islanders, and he'll have a chance to fight for the number one slot there. Malcolm Subban is going to play every single night he's capable of playing in Providence because they think they got a blue-chip goalie in him. And that either becomes incredible insurance for Rask, who's coming off a Vezina Trophy season and is locked into a long-term deal, or an unbelievable chip to be able to trade.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not going to be this year to a team that thinks they can put Malcolm Subban in goal and run the table to the Stanley Cup, but maybe 2-3 years from now, Malcolm Subban becomes a part of a blockbuster deal, or else just tries to win the job from Tuukka Rask. It doesn't break my heart to think that Malcolm Subban will have to spend most of the time opening the door and honing his skills behind Tuukka Rask, and that's your emergency backup 3 years from now.
Sure.
I mean, that's a pretty good future for the Boston Bruins.
Well, it's a hell of a backup, especially when injuries that can happen at any point, and having somebody like that behind you. I mean, we were pretty fortunate this year with Johnson. He played phenomenal, and he's probably one of the better goalies in the NHL this year, when he played. So, what I want to kind of slide to, and once again, we're chatting with Jack Edwards from Nesson here, calling Boston Bruins games. I want to kind of chat about, I said this at the end of the year, I wrote about it at the end of the year. At what point does the Jordan Caron experience start to go away, and does he move on? And because it just doesn't seem like he's just, it's like the land of misfit toys. He just can't fit in somehow.
Well, have they made him an offer yet?
That's the biggest question I have. Will they make him an offer?
I don't think so. Maybe he'll get an offer to come to camp.
Yeah.
But you get the feeling that he's going to get a better option somewhere else.
Yeah.
The Bruins have had a majority of their first-round picks just snuff out before the candles even started to burn, and it's a pity. But they made some big mistakes on first-round picks. They've done pretty well in the second and third rounds. So look at the guys who are on the current roster from second and third round picks. It's outstanding, but their first round's been, on the whole, a disappointment. Other than the slam dunk, Hamilton falling to number 9. Duh. who's not going to take Dougie Hamilton at number 9 when a lot of people had him rated in the top 5 of that draft.
Right.
Tyler Seguin was the other guy. If Seguin had gone to Edmonton, the Bruins get Taylor Hall. And it was automatic. So that's not a tough pick to make. The tough picks to make are the ones where you're sitting there at 16, 18, 22, and there are 9 or 10 different ways you can go. What was Jordan Caron overall? He was somewhere in the teens, right? So if you look at that draft year, there were some pretty good players behind him. Zach Hamill, the guy who went after him was Logan Couture. If there has ever been a guy that fits the Bruins mold, Logan Couture is certainly one of them.
Oh, yeah.
And for him to be on the board and for them to fall in love with Zach Hamill is just something that the team has to look back and say, wow, we just blew it. We just blew it on that one. And it's too bad. But, Caron is another guy who just hasn't panned out. He had a 5-game spell in the 2013 season where you thought, wow, that's what they saw in him. He's got what it takes. And then it just went fizz. It just didn't happen. And he's a good kid. He works hard. He's got a professional attitude, but just hasn't been able to produce in the game. He's not going to be a top 6 forward unless something dramatic happens. And that dramatic thing may just be a change of scenery, and maybe it'll be really good for somebody else.
Once again, we're talking with Jack Edwards from Nesson here, Boston Bruins. Jack, if you had to pick a player this year, that really you thought stood out above all, really for expectations-wise, really turned it around, who would that player be on the team that really got you saying, wow, I'm glad we picked this guy up, or I'm glad we had him in our system?
Carl Soderberg.
Yeah.
I was really impressed with the way he learned how to play the North American game and how he changed positions and proved to the Bruins staff that he could play center. Soderberg is a big body. He continued to get better throughout the season. He didn't shy away from the physical part of the game, which you see a lot of Europeans do when they come to North America. He showed really good skill, the ability to shoot. His finishing ability has got to improve. He had a little bit too much warning track power. It could have been goal-scoring stuff that the Bruins needed. But then again, it was his first year in the National Hockey League. I don't even count the cup of coffee in 2013.
Right.
That was his first real exposure to the grind of an NHL schedule and the rigors of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And from where I sat, I certainly liked what I saw. I think Carl Soderberg's going to be better and maybe significantly better this season because he's a really serious athlete. He's not a guy that sort of thinks everything's going to come easily. He understands the short earning window. It's a short opportunity to make his mark as a hockey player, and I get the feeling he's going to take advantage of it. He was a real pleasant surprise for me.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That would have been one of my. It would have been him, and I think during the season, I think somebody like Kevin Miller to me had played phenomenal during the season. The expectations level with him, big kid, and not afraid to throw the weight around. Not afraid to throw the weight around at all either. Love it.
And you know what? That's one of the reasons that they could let go of Sean Thornton because with the presence of a Miller or a McQuaid and the other guys who take care of themselves, even with the loss of a Ginla who mixed it up plenty, there are going to be guys on the ice that don't let it get out of hand. When the threshold is crossed by an opponent, they're going to feel it, and they should. And that's the way the game ought to be played.
Absolutely. Jack, well, listen, this is what we do. We're a little different than most of the radio shows you've been on. We like to have a little bit of fun. We cue some music up, and we're going to ask you one simple question. You're going to have 3 lovely ladies to choose from, and then we're going to kind of roll from there. You ready to have some fun on a Thursday?
Yeah, sure. Let's go.
Hit it, Maestro. Hit it. I'm going to make sure I'm playing some of our genuine music for you right now, okay? But when Jack Edwards retires, where would Jack Edwards like to live someday? On an island, on a mountain, a beach? Where would you want to live?
Mountain.
Mountain.